Hello, my friends. How are you? As always, I really hope you're having an awesome day. And as always, this is Heather, and this is the Back to Me podcast. And yes, another amazing human being is going to share their wealth of knowledge with us so that we can learn more and become more awesome and become healthier and happier and all of those things that we're striving to do in life. And today I am talking to Dr. Carla Freeman from Abundant Health, Arizona. How's the weather
Hello.
in Arizona?
Well, it is always reliably sunny and 70 degrees here, but
Right.
right now it's a little colder, which has been interesting.
Right?
Interesting. Yep.
Reliably. I like that. Reliably warm and sunny. That's
Yeah.
where a lot of Canadians like to go to retire.
Yes.
You
Yes.
probably know that,
Everybody likes to come here to retire. Everybody
right?
here is from somewhere else. So
So, um, Dr. Carla, I feel like I'm on like a radio show. Dr. Carla, can you help me? No. So you
I'm listening.
yeah, I know you have many things that you help people with. And I guess somewhere where I generally like to start is what drew you into, and this helps explain what you do, what drew you into what you help people with?
Oh, well, my own health journey is what really got me started. I was, in my late 20s when I decided to have children. And that is an extreme sport. And I wasn't really built for extreme sports at that point in my life. I had always been a little overweight. I was hit by a car when I was around 3 years old.
Oh
And
my
so
gosh.
my body didn't work the same way other kids. I mean, I could walk, and that was kind of the thing. I was the 70s. They put me through physical therapy. Set my leg, casted it, came out of it. Oh, you can walk, you're fine. Never really addressing the physical, emotional, maybe like the ways that my body had to adapt to that stress to be okay. So yeah, so I've always been a little overweight, a little out of breath, and and then I knew that having children was gonna, like I said, an extreme sport, right?
I've
So I
never heard it
started,
described that way. That's awesome.
yeah. I was like, well, I know I'm gonna need to be healthier, and I want them to be healthier.
Right.
I was saying today, I was raised, the 80s, the 90s, the era of food is fast and cheap, and my mom was a working mom. I mean, she did her best to cook healthy food for us, but if I could walk down the street and go to a fast food place, that's what I wanted to do.
Right.
And then even going to college and living on my own, it was like, oh, I just get it out of a box or get it out of a bag, and I just kind of had a hunch that that was not going to carry the day and not help my kids be healthy. So I became a little bit of a fanatic, a little bit of an advocate, all of the above, and I learned about nutrition and uh, natural health alternatives. And I was kind of the go-to person in my community. The other moms I hung out with, I was the little Leche League leader. I helped moms breastfeed as long as they could, and then I started a food co-op so that we could buy
Wow.
organic groceries directly from the distributor. Because back in the early aughts, like
That's
that
like
wasn't.
cutting edge.
It was. We had to buy cases of things because we didn't have stores that just carried organic, had whole aisles dedicated to organic like that. I like to say we were kind of the pioneers. We made that happen because we were really voting with our pocketbook, right? Like, no,
Right.
we want these foods to be available, so we'd go to all these links to do that. So I organized that, and then in 2006 I got interested in a technique called BEST. We call it BEST for short. It's Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique, because
That's
after
a mouthful.
it's long, right? That's why we just call it BEST.
Okay.
But after upgrading my health with diet and nutrition and chiropractic care, I still had some chronic things hanging around. I still had some depression. I still had a hard time controlling my weight and sticking to the things that I knew. I'd done all this research now, but there was that, okay, there's what you know, and then there's doing what you know. And that
Yeah.
was really still difficult, right? So I discovered this technique called BEST and had a huge upgrade in my health, like physically, mentally, and emotionally, like all of it all at once. And then I got inspired to take the training and become a best practitioner. And after working with people and seeing miracles, with my clients, I felt like I needed to have some kind of degree so that I could talk to them about it and, really understand why, why did they get up off my table and they, their joints didn't hurt and their neck was looser and they had more energy, like what was actually happening. So I decided to go to chiropractic college. And
Wow.
yeah, so at 40 years old with a stay-at-home mom with a business degree, I went away to chiropractic college and then learned really all about the physiology, the neurology, the endocrinology, and then the psychology, like how they all work together. And
Right.
that's the experience that we have.
The
So
ologies.
all the ologies, which was, I always say, if you looked at my college transcript, my undergrad transcript, anything with an ology after it had a very poor grade. So yeah, I didn't know how I was going to make it through, but I did. I was just really passionate about it, and I got to study all kinds of other techniques along the way, and really got a really great understanding of how we can basically hack the nervous system. All the answers are there. Our body is a miracle. If you give it the right conditions and the right stimulus, it can heal anything. It can accomplish anything. I mean, like, right, starting with childbirth all the way
Right.
to running marathons and climbing mountains. Like, the human body is truly amazing, and I'm just very excited that every day I get to come into my office and help women. I work primarily now with women who, you get to your 40s, 50s, and 60s, and it's complicated. It's complicated. So we sort all that out with your body's own reflexes and systems.
You get to this weird place where the body that you owned for most of your life starts doing weird things. You're like, hey, who? What happened to the body snatchers? How did this? Where's my
Right?
old body?
Exactly. Or you're just used to being able to put up with things and perform over them, right? You've had
Right.
strategies to adapt, and then one day the strategy doesn't work anymore. And it's like, what happened? I used to be able to do that.
Right. So is best a hands-on practice? It's actually funny enough. One of the I can't believe I've never heard of it because I've heard of
Yeah.
so many things. But
So it is practice hands-on and remotely, and
wow.
it's a system where we find out what you have this kind of frontal lobe that developed when you were 7 years old and helps you think, judge, and reason. And then you've got this uh, reptilian brain that organizes your body, like where are you going to put that nutrient, which food are you going to digest, which are you going to eliminate, right? You don't have to think about those things when you eat.
Right.
And that's the same system that decides like what should be healed. Are you about to be eaten by a bear? Should we run away right now? Should we heal something? Like, what should we do today? So that part of your brain we can affect with best, and we do it through an eye position, a breathing pattern, and a thought of an emotion and a number at the same time.
Whoa.
And putting all three of those things together kind of gets your brain's attention and releases whatever automatic pattern you might be running. It's usually a stress pattern. You usually just automatically like, oh wait, that, after years of living, right, you've got a lot of patterns and ways to survive, but some of them
Yeah.
are just inefficient. And so we can retime that nervous system and just have your body running more efficiently. It's really effective.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
Biohacking.
Yes, I love the biohacking.
Right? Oh my gosh, that's so true. And so interesting. I mean, I know we learn more and more about the body every day, which is awesome. And yet there's still so much that we are still discovering. There's still so much to know. I think it's awesome because I can't help it. I love learning new things.
Yeah.
And so we're talking about stress and fatigue. As I'm like, oh, I'm getting tired. No, I'm not. So you were referring to the underlying causes of stress and fatigue. What secrets do you have for me?
Yeah, well, I know for years I've had this like internal struggle, right? As a doctor and a healer, I just want to help people. And then in our modern world, you have to have a pain point. You have to talk about something, right? So I end up talking about stress. Well, there's good news and bad news. The stress isn't going away,
No, I
right?
know, definitely not.
So that may be the bad news, right? Is that whatever you do with me, I'm not going to actually have the stress go away. However, the response to the stress, how your body responds to stress, the capacity you have to deal with the stress and be creative in the face of the stress, that we can upregulate, we can expand. When you're when you're when you've got some things going on, right? I kind of break it down to three basic things that can be contributing to your inability to adapt well to stress and then end up with the fatigue. Okay. So
Right.
the underlying cause, the first one and the easiest one to move the lever is probably has something to do with the food that you're eating.
Oh,
Right.
really?
Yeah. So your brain is making the decision. What are we going to keep? What are we going to use? What are we going to do? It's very common that when you get into a stressful physiological pattern, you're responding to stress as if it's an emergency, your brain's going to say, hey, we got to run away. We got to run these big muscles. Give us some sugar. Give us more sugar.
Right.
Right. So, like I said, for myself, I did a lot of research on what to eat and how to eat, and I spent lots of time in the kitchen cooking healthy meals for my family. But when you're at the end of the day and kids are crying in the back seat and it's 4:45 and everyone's hungry, you're probably not running home to throw together a salad.
Yeah, right. And they would probably look at you like, that's not what I want.
Yeah. You don't want it either, to be honest. Human beings actually don't want vegetables. They're very low calorie. Like there's not a lot of reward in a vegetable. They've done studies on this. Susan Pierce Thompson, who I follow recently, she talks about that a lot. It's like, yeah, you can lock people up, and that's and they're gonna go for the high reward food every time, unless you have some kind of practice, unless you've pre-planned, unless you have some
Right.
commitment. It really takes something to eat healthy, beyond just knowing that you should. So so it's a feedback loop, right? Like if you can plan ahead and know what you're going to eat, then and have it ready and have some prep done, it actually is easy to go into the refrigerator and pull that stuff out and just eat it because it's there. If you have
And
to go
it,
hunt for it, forget it. You're hunting for the high calorie, high fat, high reward food. That's just how it's going to go.
don't shop hungry.
Exactly. Like simple things, right? But sometimes you have to.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
and then food really, there's a lot of things. So you could, whether you make good choices or not, your digestion may be diminished because of the stress that you're under and how your body is responding to stress. So then you're not absorbing. Even when you do pick the good things, you don't absorb the nutrients, which
right,
leads to a nutrient deficiency, which leads to a new stress, right? So all of these
right.
things are a feedback loop.
So I guess so your fastest way to kind of break that loop is to just start putting the good food in.
Yeah, I call
Yeah,
it cleansing by addition. You know, a lot of people think, oh, I got to clean up my diet, and they want to start with, let's take something out and let's restrict and then they can't sustain it and they don't know why.
right.
It's actually because, look, if your body's begging for food, it needs nutrients. So you might have to start with adding food. A lot of women, I notice too, intermittent fasting is really popular. And
Super
I think it's really
popular.
popular with women because they don't have to eat
Yeah,
for part of the day.
it's like thank
You
God I
know,
don't have to think about that meal. I'll just skip it.
exactly. And that's not actually fasting. So that's, they're working against themselves. It can be damaging to metabolism. From what I've heard recently, all of the studies on intermittent fasting have been done on men. Yeah.
Right. Which
Yeah.
often happens, doesn't it? It's like they do
Yeah.
the research first on men and then they go, oh, women are different. Let's
Hmm.
see what happens to them. And it's interesting that you say that because I did do intermittent fasting for a while. And because I'm like you, I've been studying and researching and noticing and paying attention, I found that the guidelines didn't suit me. So I could do shorter, like it's not, I mean, I don't even really call it intermittent fasting. It's like I just wait a little longer to have my breakfast.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't do those big long ones. You don't want to talk to me if you don't want to
Right.
be near me if I haven't got something inside of me. My husband calls it hangry. So,
Yeah.
and I don't want to be that way. So I'm that way because I'm not, my body's like, look, could you just give us what we need, right? And then if you do wait that long, you do end up eating the stuff that you contradicts all that you're trying to do for yourself.
Well, and that's really the point of fasting is it's kind of a misnomer. It's not really about the fast. It's, the fasting, obviously you hijack that sirtuin pathway, you cause apoptosis, you get your cells, cleaning house. It's great, but it's only valuable if you pay attention to how you're feeding.
Right. If they
That you
just
put
took out
all
the
that
garbage, don't
feeding.
dump garbage back in.
Yeah. And feed and getting enough, right? Because otherwise then it's just a starve. It's not a fast.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about vegetables. So last week's podcast was dietitian, and she really wants people to eat fruits and vegetables. And I kept thinking, okay. I mean, I love fruits and vegetables, but that's not my go-to when I am feeling depleted. That's not
Mhm.
going to satisfy the body, as you say.
Yeah.
And it is
Well, it
true.
will. It will. It's not that it won't satisfy. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's not that it
That's
won't
okay.
satisfy it. It's that if you haven't made a solid plan for getting those things, for procuring those things, it won't be your default. Like it
Right.
might be. Like with if look, if I trained myself for a year to eat 20 ounces of vegetables a day,
Wow. Look at you.
10 ounces with lunch, 10 ounces with dinner, and then also a piece of fruit with breakfast, piece of fruit with lunch. But I planned for that every single day. And then at some point, I don't know, around the 7 or 8 month mark, it was almost like I couldn't do anything else. But that's because I had put in this, I
Right.
built this structure, right? So that it's like, and then I always knew where my food was. So it starts with the planning step, and that's what I really teach in some of my programs is, yeah, it's not just what, it's how are you going to set yourself up to follow through. And we don't realize how much stress is created in our subconscious when we don't know where our next meal is coming from.
Oh,
See, we have it as freedom, right? Like we live in this society where food is abundant and we can pull in on any street corner and get food. We're not, and so we think that has us set up like, oh, we're not starving, it's fine. It doesn't. If you haven't actually written down, this is what I'm having for breakfast tomorrow, and when you do it when you're fed, right? So
yes.
after your meal the night before, you're fed, you're satisfied. Now you got to look ahead at your next day, and you say, this is what I'm having for breakfast, and this is what I'm having for lunch, and this is what I'm having for dinner, and you set yourself up to win. So you don't promise to have things that you don't actually have in the house. You don't say, oh, well, I'll run out at lunchtime and grab a salad. I mean, maybe you have a habit for that. You can do that, but don't think, oh, I'm going to, at 4:45, I'm going to come home and chop all the vegetables for dinner at 6, because
Right.
that's probably not going to happen. So can you get those vegetables chopped while you're fed, while you're it'll seem like it'll take so much less time. So it's that kind of planning. And we think of it as, like an organizational tool, right? You think, oh, that's something I learn if I go to a business seminar. Well, it's important for business too, but it's actually very important for your physical body to have that kind of planning, because then you're not hunting all day. You're not worried. It's handled. Your brain isn't
Right.
trying to figure out, where should I stop? What should I do? Where should I go? And we have what we call decision fatigue, because you're actually having to make decisions every time you open your email, every time somebody sends you a text. You're probably making like 150,000 decisions all day long. And then when it comes to that one, that like, what should I eat? We don't realize how big of a decision that is and how fatigued we are. And, and then we end up making ourselves wrong, right? Because as women, we're programmed to do that. Oh gosh, I just don't have any willpower. Well, it's true. You
Right.
don't. You actually don't. You used your willpower doing all that other stuff. So don't leave your food to willpower. Like plan ahead. And so that's a very simple practice that can have so many benefits and really reduce the stress and fatigue that you deal with every day.
And it seems super easy because I remember when I first did my first ever weight loss program, it was like, plan your meals for a week. I'm like, a week? I don't know what I'm going to want next week. Like, but one day, if you just do it the day before, oh my gosh, so easy, right? It's like, tomorrow, for sure, I'll just do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it just takes that stress. And you're right. I mean, it's not always in the front of your mind, the what am I going to eat stress, unless you're like me,
It might be, yeah. For some people,
right?
it
I
might be.
mean, it's so strange. I didn't even realize it until you said it, that I am one of those people who, well, if I'm at my studio or working, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't have any lunch plans for today. Oh my God, what am I going to eat? Well, I can't go to the store because they don't have anything that I'm going to want to eat. And then I'll just buy this. And this whole tirade of conversation goes off in my head. And then I have a power bar. So it's like, that wasn't really what I wanted to have, but I didn't want to, get McDonald's or something. So,
Yeah, and I mean, it'd be fun to play the game too. Like, just plan that night before you're having the power bar.
right?
Ding, your alarm goes off, you eat the power bar, and then you may do something else after that if it's not enough.
Yeah,
But yeah, it really is. They're really I really like what I can find very simple things. And then look, in starting a habit like this, like planning your meals the night before, probably won't be easy at first. It wasn't for me. I really had a lot of anxiety about it. I don't know why. I mean, like I said, I cooked for a family of 6 before I went to chiropractic college. But if you don't have a practice of like being in the kitchen and having the things in the pantry and getting, it can get really overwhelming when you're just your focus. You have other skills, you're off
right.
doing other things. So when I had to put this practice back in, it was really hard at first. So I just started with, I'm just going to plan for 3 days,
Oh, okay.
because it was just me and my husband. So you may have a bigger family, and then you may think like, oh, I have to eat something different from my family. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. I don't know. Maybe you make stuff for them, and then you eat part of it. You eat the protein and the vegetable. Maybe they get some extra starch, or some extra grain or something that you don't have. But I really started small, and I only shopped small too, because there was that fear. I think I had that guilt of, oh, I bought all those vegetables and then I didn't eat them, right?
Right.
Thing that like I'm gonna fail again. So no, I just bought enough for 3 days, and then I planned the 3 days and I ate the 3 days, and then on the second day, okay, let's plan for the next three. And then after a while, then it was easy. Okay, now I Sunday night you can cook the chicken for the whole week, and I mean, throw a roast, you do a pot roast, and then I weigh and measure all my food. It's one of my practices as well, because it's also that can come from like a diet mindset, like, oh no, I'm restricted. No, I want to make sure I'm eating enough. Like, I don't want to
Right.
have to rely on, did I get the right size of my palm or whatever. Like, I want to know I'm getting 6 ounces of protein, because I know 6 ounces of protein is what I need. Some people may only need 4. So anyway, I weigh and measure everything, and then it's like it's all put there in a little. It's already measured, and I grab a protein, I grab a vegetable, piece of fruit, and I'm out the door, and it's super easy.
It's
So
such a different mindset, which thank you so much for that because that totally shifts the way you think about it. So I weigh with the, oh, I can only have, but if you shift it to the, I have to make sure I'm getting enough,
mhm.
that is brilliant.
Yeah, especially if you want to eat, especially if you take on my recommendation to have 20 ounces of vegetables a day.
How much is that, by the way?
Oh well, that's why you weigh it, because obviously you can play around. It's
That's a lot of lettuce,
half
isn't it?
cups or whatever. Yeah, you don't want to have all lettuce. You'll start finding some heavier vegetables. Trust me, trust me.
And potatoes aren't a vegetable, right?
They are not. They are a starch. You can have those. I have those for breakfast. I mean, you can have those for lunch sometimes. Better to
I
keep.
always joke with my husband, potatoes are a vegetable, honey. No, they're not. And then so I mean you're so a couple of things there that came to my mind. One, like I went back to massage school, 2 years of massage school with all the ologies when I was 40 as well. So I know it's hard to jump into I had a business degree and suddenly I was having to learn Latin, all the anatomy and all the ologies. And but if it's something that you're passionate about and is important to you, you can do it, right? So you decided to go and become a chiropractor, and you said, how the heck am I going to do this? And you just said, well, I'm going to figure it out and I'm going to do it. So now, and then when you came back and you're just thinking, oh my gosh, how am I going to cook? You said, this is important, and you
Mhm.
just found your way to do it. So I think sometimes people would never say that they were not important. Like if you say to someone, don't you value your health? Of course I value my health. But it's the action of making it important enough that you stay with learning a new routine, like staying with something new long enough so that you actually know it and it just becomes second nature, right? I think that's so important.
Yeah, I used James Clear has a book, Atomic Habits, and he
Oh,
really talks
yes.
about building a habit stack, right? So that's really important, tying it to something you're already doing, and like having dinner at night was something I was already doing, right? I know I'm going to eat a meal in the evening, so adding on writing down my meal for the next day, like that was a simple thing because I'm already sitting down. But I think the other thing about starting any new habit is understanding that, yeah, you probably can't do it at first, and being able to get rid of some of that unconscious stress that we talked about.
Yeah.
And so, in my healing practice, I work with Neuro-Emotional Technique and Bio-Energetic Synchronization Technique, NET and BEST, to take that unconscious stress off so that people can really go through their life being more relaxed. So, you know, for a lot of people, getting some outside help would make a big difference instead of trying to do it all ourselves. Another characteristic that I find very particular to women is that we try to do it all ourselves.
Super
If you
women.
Yes, exactly. If you got a little support and took off some of that ambient stress, it probably would really support you in building those habits. And I could show, if it's okay. I don't know. This
Yeah.
is a podcast, and but they can see us too, right? Can you see me?
Well, they can see you. So
If they watch it
if we're
that way,
watching on YouTube or LinkedIn, it's video. But if they're listening on Google Podcasts
right?
or
I'll
Spotify, they
be,
can't see you. But you can show us for the people who are watching
well,
and
I'll
the
be
rest.
descriptive then too. This will be good.
Yeah, yeah,
So you probably have heard, like, oh, take some time to meditate. Oh, take
yes.
some time to just breathe. Do you know how hard it is to do deep breathing when you're stressed? Isn't that funny?
I'm a meditation teacher, so
Right? And you probably hear this all the time. I just
yeah,
can't do it,
it's
right?
too much.
Yeah. So I'm going to show you a little trick that you can use to get yourself settled. Would you like that?
Okay, yeah, I love
Something
it.
you can use with your students. So you take one hand,
Does it
and
matter which one?
doesn't matter because we're going to do both sides, and you just put
Okay.
your palm on your forehead, like as if you were like, oh, Dios mío, like as if you're like, oh my goodness, like how your hand just naturally ends up there, and how it feels good, like when you were little and you had a fever. Remember your
Oh
mom like
yes,
did this, and remember how good that felt? Well, it
yes.
turns out there's some emotion points there on your forehead, so you're kind of getting connected to your emotions. And then you take your other hand and just put it on your wrist, like as if you're gonna kind of wrap your fingers around your wrist, and your fingers will just naturally land on your pulse points that are just below your thumb there.
Right,
And then you're holding those pulse points. There's three of them in Chinese medicine. There's three pulses there. Your first three fingers will just land right naturally on there. And then you can just kind of play with having a light pressure to those pulse points, and then maybe going a little deeper. And then just taking a few deep breaths while you're connecting to these pulse points will help release that pent up energy. Maybe something stuck on a meridian, maybe. But it just feels good. You feel really cared for. It only takes, I don't know, 2 to 3 breaths, 3 to 5 breaths. I mean, Heather's the meditation teacher. She'll tell us how long it should do it for.
right. It's like I
But,
was already calm to start with. I don't know what you're talking about.
right, exactly. And then you can switch. So then you can just kind of unhook and then just rehook with the other hand on your forehead, and then reach around, because there's a couple different meridians that you hit on the other hand.
Right. I
And
can remember someone doing the pulse test on me and saying, "Oh, your liver is sluggish." I'm like, "What?"
yeah, exactly. So yeah, so this is really, we call this the first aid stress tool, and you can use this anytime. And there's actually even a website that we can put in the show notes. Oh gosh, I listen to so many podcasts. I've never got to say that before. Can we put this in the show notes?
Totally. Let's put it in the show notes.
Yeah. So firstaidstresstool.com. It's not my website. It's actually sponsored by the founders of Neuro-Emotional Technique. It's a gift to the world, and it'll help you just release that stress pattern. So make it part of your habit stack before you eat anything. Link up for 2 to 3 breaths on either side, and then you might be a little more present for planning, or right before you make your meals, or right before you write your menu for the next day. Just
Right.
getting a little grounded will help with that.
And it's so interesting because you're feeling your pulse, which is making you pay attention to your body in a different way. And it's giving your brain something to do, your brain is thinking, oh, what is this? What's going on? And I can see how that would totally dial you down, which is, I love it.
Yeah. And then
So
if you're having
fabulous.
trouble, like if you notice, like, oh, this is on this side, that like on my right side, it always calms me down, then maybe that's something to dig into a best session or a net session to find out what's going on that meridian. Is it physical, emotional? Is it some past trauma or event that has gotten stuck in your body, and then we can clear that. So
Right? Oh my gosh, so true. Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because I've like heard of tapping and I could list off a whole pile of
There's a
things,
lot of them, and it's so interesting. They all are unique. They all do something amazing. They all got a name because they worked for somebody. Any of those
right?
techniques, right? So it's interesting when I have people who teach or use other modalities, and they come to me and they have a net session or a best session. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's so cool! And it's not the same as what I do. It's
Right?
different, but it supports it. I always say it's like there's all these different ways to access the nervous system, and you just got to find the right one
Well,
for
and
the.
even when it's so, I retired from massage therapy at the end of December. I was a massage therapist for 14 years. And even I would tell people for my own, even for myself, like some days it's yoga, some days it's Tai Chi, some days I need a massage, some days I need acupuncture, some days I need my chiropractor, some days I need my osteopath. But it takes a little bit. I have a whole
Yeah,
file of decks of people to take care of me. But as you, it takes some practice to know which thing you will help you at what time, right?
absolutely.
And
And just
what's going to be
being
most
willing to
effective.
try things, right?
Yeah,
Just try it out. And sometimes we do outgrow certain practices or certain modalities, but then sometimes circle back to that one that was
yeah,
from a long time ago, just so you can see how you've changed and grown. And then luckily, there's always new people to meet and all these new things to learn. So,
yeah. That's amazing. So you do help people virtually as well, online,
mhm. Yeah, I have a 6 month program it's called the Transformed You program, where we um, basically start with, what are you dealing with? What are the things that, even though you know how to eat, what are the habits that come up over and over again? We do a little testing, not a lot of testing, like not to the level of a full functional medicine doctor, but we might do some lab testing or some gut biome testing to find out, like, are there underlying viruses, food intolerances, something that we really need to deal with. One of the upgrades I had in my health in the last couple of years is I didn't realize the viral load that I was dealing with.
wow.
All those times you've taken antibiotics, does anybody ever go back to check to see, did you totally get rid of that virus? I mean,
No,
you don't take antibiotics for viruses, number one, although for the last 30 or 40 years, yes, we did.
right? Oops.
Right. Right. And then we didn't go back to check to see, is the bacteria gone? Like, your symptoms go away, so it's done. But there are a number of viruses that stay in your system. Epstein-Barr virus is one of them. We know, like, chickenpox is one, the varicella virus, right? It stays in your system and then comes out as shingles when you get stressed when
Right?
you're a little older. So
Yeah,
but there's a lot of different viruses like that they find. It's not that you got rid of the virus, it's that you beat it back. And then on some level, you might be using resources to keep that virus in check. So we see if it's appropriate to do a homeopathic cleanse with a virus series to help your body really kind of handle those viruses and get them calmed down,
right,
so they're not stealing your energy. And again, all the good resources you give your body when it's being used to deal with a virus that you could actually reduce. You don't want to
right.
do that.
It's like piling stuff on somebody's desk who's already got too much to do. Yeah, I'll
Exactly.
get to that later.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we just really talk through everything, and then we come up with a plan. And then you get weekly support to implement things like planning your food ahead. And then, there's a myriad of programs out there, right? You could eat keto, you could eat paleo, you could go on a shake replacement program. You could go on a no sugar, no flour program. You could do intermittent fasting. You could take on being a vegan. Like, the question always is like, oh, what's best? There actually isn't one answer. The only answer is what's best for you and what are you going to stick with. And sometimes you actually need someone to walk you through that and support you and figure out what works and doesn't work. So you get that kind of support weekly. And then in those sessions, when it comes up, we also do the emotional work. So if you're really bumping into, like, gosh, I keep binging, or I keep having this snack over and over, or I can't, I work out for 3 weeks and then I stop. And there might be an emotional cause, so we can address that.
So your 6 month program, is it one on one or is it, do you do group or how do you manage that?
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I'm so excited about how this works. So it is one on one, which is phenomenal. I mean, just that's what my clients say. I'm not just
Yeah,
saying that.
yeah,
But what I found, I was beta testing some different ways to work with people this last year. And what I found is that in addition to the one-on-one work, the clients who also took advantage of my group offerings, we have a 7-day jumpstart program where really for 7 days we meet every day for 30 minutes and we help
Wow.
you get on track with low glycemic eating. And then we do a follow-up to that program for 28 days where we meet once a week. And the people who participated in the community and had that regular interaction as well as working with me one-on-one had just phenomenal results and had so much more satisfaction and fulfillment in their program, and were like just set up to just keep going so much better than the people who were just working one-on-one. And I just think that's so amazing because I love getting people together. I love the power of community. And so there's a little bit of a tendency to be like, well, if I'm talking to her anyway, I don't need
Yeah.
to get on that extra call. I don't need that extra support. But it's just so fascinating what we learn when we listen to each other and when people give each other tips. And then there's something about, again, how your brain organizes itself if you get validated. Like if you're in a community of people and all the people are doing the same thing that you're trying to do, it makes it so much easier to make that positive lifestyle change. It probably, I guess it makes it easier to make a negative change too. If you're around a bunch of people
Right.
that are doing negative things, it works both ways, right?
Well, and it's true of
So
everything. I mean, I can think of anything like even courses that I was in, even my coach, because of course, as being a coach, I think having a coach is important and I'm going to have my own. But I have the added, but I do see him regularly, but we also have a community of coaches who meet regularly and have conversations and courses that I've been in where, yeah, you go to class, but then there's that added people who are just, you can say, someone asks a question, you're like, oh my God, I never thought of that. That's such a brilliant question. And it does, it keeps, I find that having that just helps you stay more engaged and more excited about it. And it does change your results. And no matter what you're trying to do, have as much support as you can in anything that you're trying to do makes such a big deal, doesn't it?
it really does. It really does. And it was fun to have it. Just turned out that way, scheduling wise. Some people could come to the extra things. And then there were other people who weren't working with me one on one who were in the group programs and they had really phenomenal results too.
That's so
So
good.
yeah, so there's a lot of different ways to participate, but the full 6 month program includes it all. You can opt into the community events. You can just meet with me. I mean, you can pay me and not meet with me. That's okay too. I don't know. I don't know what the results are for that, but I'm
That's
open to
like
trying it
it's like
out. We can
it's
beta
like getting a
test
gym
that.
membership and and saying,
Yeah,
"Why aren't I getting into shape?" But you're not going to the gym.
exactly.
And I know that at the holiday times you have the holiday, no, healthy through the holidays. And
Yeah.
we were
So
talking how the holidays go all the way to Valentine's Day now.
pretty much, right? It starts with Halloween, the sugar holiday, the sugar fiesta, and then it goes all the way through all of the holidays. And then January 1st, there's that little bit of like, okay, I'm going to get started. I'm going to start something new. And then usually then you got the Super Bowl and Valentine's Day. And usually by about then, it's like you've forgotten what your goals were. You don't even want, you gained so much weight over the holidays. You're behind 10 pounds. Who knows what it is, whether it's weight or you
Right,
had a great exercise routine and you gave it up because you were traveling and now it's so hard to get back into. So we created a program called Healthy Through the Holidays, where again we have this weekly community support every week from October to the new year. And it's really phenomenal because then we can talk about, hey, I'm going to this party. How do I handle? I have this great food habit. How do I keep it? How do
right,
I get in? And we start with, I have my holiday survival guide that you get. And it really starts with like, you know what? The holidays can be a little bit of a stressful time. There's a lot of emotion, there's a lot of things tied up in there. So, of course, doing the emotional work throughout the year really helps with that. And then maybe doubling up during the holidays to deal with
right.
whatever the family things are or, the work things are. Um, but then there's like picking one thing instead of trying to do it all and then making yourself wrong. And if you can really pick the one thing. So this year, this last program we did, my one thing was my exercise, my running. I had established a running habit over the summer. I ran my first 10K actually on October 30th last
Oh,
year.
congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, it was quite a breakthrough for me. And but then I also had a food habit. Like I had all these different habits, and so I said, okay, my one thing is going to be my running. No matter what happens, I'm getting out there and doing that run. And it was so phenomenal because I think I really stuck to my other habits much more than I would have if I wouldn't have been focused on that one thing. And the
And
days I didn't, it was okay
right.
because I still did my one thing. I was still
Yeah.
winning, and I think there's just a natural limitation that you have when you have a goal like that.
Well, and when you choose one thing and you're successful, then you have the self-talk of I'm successful and I can do the things I promise. Instead of trying to do them all and say I failed, 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 failed.
Yeah.
So focus on one. That's brilliant. That's awesome. And they can find links to all of this stuff on your website, right?
Yeah, yeah. So at abundanthealtharizona.com. And then in the show notes, I'd love to offer your listeners a free 30-minute transformed you discovery call with me. You know, they always say new year, new you. We say
Yeah,
no more of that. No more new year, new you. There's nothing wrong with you. You're perfect just the way you are. You don't need a new one, but you can transform something. We can
totally
create the
transform something,
transformed you this year.
right?
So, yeah,
Yeah,
so they welcome to get on a phone call with me and we can go through a little process and find out what is next for your health and wellness and your vitality.
that's so awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So, yes, everybody, it will all be in the show notes. Don't worry if you were driving and couldn't stop and write it down. But before we go, I always love this part as well. I love the whole thing. But first of all, thank you for sharing all of this wisdom with us. Thank you for all of this. But before we say goodbye, I'd love to hear a final word of wisdom for everyone.
Oh, well, thank you. And yes, it's my pleasure. Thanks so much for the invitation to share what I'm passionate about. And I think the my word of wisdom would be don't give up. You know, there come I even work with women who have been in the health and wellness space for decades. You know, they're like, and they're just resigned. And it's hard because they're like, I know, because I used to cook so well, and I used to, and then look, life happens. It's just lifey, things happen to you, and it can be really tempting to just say, ah, no, that makes a difference. I'm not going to do it. But don't give up. Or maybe you've just struggled for years. I mean, also work with people who've been from doctor to doctor. They've been on this plan, that plan, and it seems like nothing works. Don't give up. Keep looking, keep asking, keep talking to people, and never give up on yourself because you really are a miracle. And I know that you can find the resources you need to express that.
That's awesome. That's a fabulous final word of wisdom. So I'm not even going to talk over it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Carla. Thank you so much, friends, for joining and partaking and listening and learning. And, yes, you are super awesome. So keep your awesome self moving upwards, right? Thank you. Take good care.